Ethan parked on the familiar tree-lined block in front of their house, killed the engine, and then just sat there. Outside the windshield, the street lamp splintered the maple shadows across the steering wheel and across the rigid line of his spine. In the passenger seat sat a heavy cardboard box holding the emptied contents of his desk. A 5-year-old thermos mug, a few technical books, one team photo, and a service coin that had once celebrated 5 loyal years at Pillar. Now it all felt like a joke. Pillar, the starstruck startup he had poured every waking hour into, the place he'd assumed he would grow old with, had folded after its series flop the way a sandcastle collapses when the tide pulls back. That afternoon the head of HR had needed exactly 10 polite, glacial minutes to announce the entire tech division was being axed. 35. Tech director. In the tech world, that label had flipped overnight from gold leaf resume to deadweight. He stayed in the car so long that dusk was completely swallowed by night, so long that the neighbors' windows lit up one after another like warm little stage lights. He felt like the parked car itself. Zero torque. Trapped in a postcard he knew by heart, unable to move. Finally, he drew a full breath, as if about to dive, lifted the box, and walked into the lobby. The key turning in the lock was barely audible, yet Luna heard it instantly. She leaned out from the kitchen, floral apron tied at her waist, spatula in hand. Her automatic smile froze when she saw the box and the ashen color of his face. Then the smile melted into careful, wordless sorrow. "You're home," she sang, tone deliberately light. "Food's almost ready. Made your favorite sweet and sour ribs tonight." Ethan didn't answer. He avoided her eyes, bent to change his shoes, and set the box in the corner of the foyer like incriminating evidence. He grunted, then headed straight for the bathroom. "Gonna wash up." Luna watched the back that once stood arrow straight while he commanded conference rooms now curl forward. She turned off the burner, walked to the foyer, opened the box, and understood everything. A soundless sigh landed heavy inside her, but she rearranged her face. Any direct comfort or question risked becoming the last straw. She could not fall apart. The family needed her steady hand on the tiller. At dinner the silence smothered. Ethan ate with mechanical, slow chews. Luna tried light chatter, neighborhood gossip, funny clips she'd seen online, but each remark sank like a pebble in a deep pond. "How was work today?" she finally risked, casual as she could make it. His chopsticks paused over the pork, then continued. "Gone," he rasped, eyes still on the bowl. "That's okay," she answered at once, voice soft and sure. "A break will be good. You were running on fumes. Perfect time for you to hang out with me and Daisy." Their 5-year-old was in her room, crayoning a masterpiece. For the first time he looked up. The sockets were hollow, no emotion at all, and that scared her more than anger. He echoed, and shut down. Later, Luna lay listening to the even but wide-awake breathing beside her. She knew he was staring at the ceiling. She didn't reach to hug him. Touch might read as pity. Instead, she slid her hand sideways until it rested on the back of his. His fingers were ice. They twitched, but stayed. Through the dark they endured the storm, neither speaking. The first month of unemployment became a total system halt. Ethan still rose early, saw Luna and Daisy off, then sealed himself inside. Resumes disappeared into the ether. A couple of headhunter calls led nowhere. 35-year-old tech director. High salary expectations, instant red flag beside kids who could pull all-nighters. Failure wrapped around him like kudzu, tightening every day. He spent hours at the study monitor, screen frozen on an empty desktop or refreshing job boards that never blinked back. Afternoons he napped as if sleep were a hiding place. Luna suggested weekend movies or taking Daisy to Riverside. He waved them off. Too tired or just not into it. He turned hypersensitive. When Luna came home and asked, "Any news today?" he'd go mute, face thunderous, convinced she was doubting him. The week she quietly celebrated her own promotion and wanted to take everyone out for a nice dinner. He interpreted it as silent bragging, shoved his chair back, and walked out, leaving her and Daisy staring at empty seats. Home, once a harbor, felt like low-pressure detention. Daisy sensed the change and stopped flinging herself into his lap. Luna watched him sink day by day, frantic inside. "Ethan, we all know how good you are. The market's just lousy," she tried. Silence. "You can't stay underwater forever. We need you." He locked himself away. "So now you think I'm useless too?" She realized words, any words, were useless. He hadn't lost merely a job. He'd lost the entire scaffolding of self-worth and masculine pride he'd spent years bolting together. He didn't need directions shouted from the riverbank. He needed someone in the mud beside him, crawling out inch by inch. She would have to rewrite the playbook. The pivot came on a Saturday afternoon. Luna collected Daisy early from art class, and the little girl burst through the door waving a riot-colored drawing toward Ethan, who was comatose on the couch watching sports highlights. Daddy, look at my family portrait." On the paper, 3 Three wobbly stick figures stood hand in hand on top of a huge, crazily intricate overpass bridge. The lines were childish, but the layers crisscrossed with real thought. Ethan gave it an absent-minded glance. Pretty good, he muttered. Daisy wouldn't let go. She jabbed the tallest figure in the middle. That's you. You're an engineer. The strongest ever. You can build bridges this tough and this beautiful. When I grow up, I'm gonna be just like you and build giant bridges. The offhand praise hit like a key ramming into a locked hatch inside Ethan. He stared at the drawing, at the hero dad Daisy saw, then at the wreck he'd become, and shame swept through him so hard it hurt. For the first time, family expectations didn't feel like pressure. They felt like a scorching debt he couldn't pay. Luna caught the tremor in his eyes. Still silent, she stepped over, curled an arm around their daughter, and said softly, Daisy's dream is wonderful. You haven't taken us to see the bridges in ages, and today's perfect. Want to walk down to the river? It wasn't a demand. It was an invitation, one that pulled him out of the sealed apartment and into open air, away from the past and into the present. He studied their hopeful faces, waited a few beats, then gave the smallest nod. The sunset that evening was golden, light dripping across the suspension cables that spanned the water. River-scented wind brushed their cheeks. Daisy sprinted across the grass at Riverside, laughter ringing. Ethan and Luna strolled side by side, saying nothing for the longest time. Back when a project hit a nasty technical wall, he finally rasped. Breaking the hush, I'd come here alone and stare at the bridges. Those huge things cross impossible gaps just by sheer discipline, structure, and physics. I always figured code was the same, no matter how tangled the bug. There's an optimal path. It was the first upbeat sentence about his old work he'd offered since the layoff. Luna didn't interrupt. She let the words hang. Now, he stared at the current, voice sinking. The road feels cut. Roads don't vanish, she answered, stopping to face him. Gaze steady. You're just off the map for a bit. You aren't the road. You're the guy who designs and rebuilds them. Don't forget what you can do. She didn't say, I'll find the way or the exit is right ahead. She handed the compass back to him. In that instant, wind whipping Luna's hair, sunset glowing in her eyes. Ethan realized her quiet, her care, tonight's pinpoint cue, none of it passive. It was resilient, calculated steering. She wasn't shoving. She was lifting the dust off his heart, grain by grain. After the riverside walk, frost inside the house began to thaw. Ethan was still jobless, but he no longer slept till noon or zoned out at his laptop. He started digging through the study, pulling long-neglected tech manuals off the shelves. Luna knew that once ice cracks, you have to lay a gentle track so he can regain rhythm and balance. She stopped talking in airy abstractions about the future or a new job. Instead, she floated concrete, bite-sized errands. Han, that old laptop in the study crawls like a turtle and I'm hopeless at this stuff. Can you wipe it? Reinstall the OS. Tune it up? A pocket-sized mission guaranteed to deliver an instant win. Oh, my coworker wants a high-end desktop. Budget and use case are in this email, but the parts list is Greek to me. Could you spec it out? A chance for his expertise to feel wanted. He quietly knocked out each SOS plea. Fingers drummed the keyboard with remembered confidence while swapping SSDs or juggling GPU benchmarks. Luna cheered every time. Incredible. Pros make it look so easy. She also began nudging part of the household load onto him, claiming a crunch at work. She handed over daily pickup duty for Daisy's preschool. At first he functioned on autopilot, yet gripping that small trusting hand on the sidewalk, listening to daycare gossip, watching Daisy brag, "That's my dad," to every kid. He felt a solid, repairing sense of being essential. He volunteered for grocery runs and dinner prep, tying on a floral apron. He attacked recipes with the same focus he once aimed at stacked traces. When Luna and Daisy raved over his sweet and sour ribs, a shy smile finally crept back. These ordinary chores became shiny new rails of routine. On them he wasn't the axed, former tech director, he was the husband who fixes laptops, the advisor who writes killer rigs, the dad who never misses pickup, the cook who packs the table. Each tiny triumph, each accepted burden, laid another sturdy railroad tie under the wreckage of his world. Chapter 5, Pivot Life slipped into a calmer cadence. Yet Luna knew domestic peace wasn't the finish line. Home is a safe harbor, but sooner or later Ethan had to sail again, toward work big enough for his talent and drive. One night, after Daisy conked out, Luna settled beside him on the couch, tablet in hand, scrolling idly. "Hey, look at this. It's actually pretty interesting," Luna said, sliding her phone across the kitchen island. Ethan leaned in. It was a tech media op-ed on how legacy manufacturers could reinvent themselves with industrial and data analytics. Every pain point and technical roadmap felt lifted from his own resume. "A lot of these companies aren't short on need," Luna murmured, rinsing a plate as if the topic were small talk. "What they're missing is someone who speaks both languages, tech and shop floor. The architectural thinking you did for pillar. Same blueprint, different zip code. Could be a lane. She never said a you should. She simply seeded the idea, then grafted it onto the part of him that still believed he mattered. The sentence landed like a grain of pollen in newly cracked soil. For the first time since the layoff, Ethan opened his laptop without dread. He devoured industry white papers, signed up for trade newsletters, and mapped the white space Luna had hinted at. The gap was real, and his skill set fit it like a milled gear. That weekend Zach, an old teammate now running engineering at an industrial automation firm, invited him for tea, over steam and clinking ceramic. Zach vented. They wanted a smart monitoring and predictive maintenance suite for their line, but every software house they'd auditioned either showed up with slideware fantasies or proposed platforms that would wilt under real coolant mist and vibration. Ethan listened. Chopsticks paused midair, while a system diagram auto-assembled in his head. He put his tea down and walked Zach through the fatal flaws: data latency, sensor drift, PLC handshake failures, then sketched a counter-architecture that used edge nodes, time series buffers, and a rules engine he'd already half-built at Pillar. Zach's eyes went wide. He slapped the table. Ethan, you're still the guru. Utter waste letting that brain collect dust. Consult for us. Name your rate. We'll cut the PO today. The gig hadn't come from firing resumes into the void. It had knocked on his door because the expertise was unmistakable. No sprint demos at 2 a.m. No vanity OKRs, just depth, trust, and a cadence he could breathe in. He cycled home along Riverside, the bridge lights flickering like low-key fireworks, and laid it out for Luna while she stirred sweet and sour ribs. She tasted the sauce, smiled, and said, "Sounds like you. You'll have room to think and still make the school pickups. Go." In Serena's world, tolerance meant something to erase, not celebrate. As a precision instrument engineer, her job was to chase zero. Every bore, every laser cut, every interferometer readout had to flirt with absolute exactitude. Her life ran on the same calibration. Wake 7 a.m., run 3 miles, consume 350 milliliters of milk and 2 slices of whole grain toast. Swipe into Meridian at 8:15 sharp. Her 5-year roadmap, yearly deliverables, monthly KPIs, and daily to-do blocks marched through the grid pages of a chestnut leather planner the way dimensions marched across her drawings. Crisp, orthogonal, non-negotiable. Deviation equaled chaos, and Serena hated chaos. So when a deviation dumped her beside Adrian one rainy night, her first response was fight or flight irritation. The glitch started with a 9 to 10:30 international Zoom that shoved her usual overtime into overtime. Compounding it, her phone had died on silent at dawn, so she never saw the thunderstorm flag. At 10:40 p.m. she stood under Meridian's awning, watching rain shred the lamplight and staring at a rideshare app spinning its lazy carousel. No driver. She inhaled, zipped her blazer, and prepared to sprint the 3 blocks to the subway entrance. A deep blue compact umbrella swung over her head like a commandeered satellite, heading to the subway. "I'm going that way, let's share." Serena flinched, half expecting a mugger. The voice belonged to a tall guy in a gray hoodie, hair wind-whipped, eyes bright with a candor she couldn't classify. She recognized him from the elevator, Forma, the industrial design loft upstairs. They'd never even nodded. "I'm fine, thanks," she said, instinctively stepping back, shoes clear of the puddle perimeter. Night rule number 1, no male strays. He shrugged, scooted the umbrella toward her so the rim brushed her temple while his own shoulder met the downpour. "Adrian, Forma, 7th floor. Honestly, you'll drown before a driver shows. Think of it as a neighborly tow." Rain drilled the nylon canopy, his sleeve soaked through in real time. Serena ran the risk calc. Sprint equals soaked shoes. Potential cold. Ruined suede. Acceptance equals 15-minute exposure to a known tenant with a business card she could photograph. The math favored option B. "All right, appreciate it," she answered, stiff as a stepper motor, maintaining a 8-inch buffer just to the subway entrance. "Copy that," he said, matching stride. The walk was short, but the storm turned every second into white noise. Silence felt clunky, so Serena hunted for a controlled variable. "Your studio, late hours lately. Lights are still on at midnight." "Rush job," Adrian replied, angling the umbrella so wind didn't gut it. "You too. Seems you close the building most nights." "Chasing a drift," she offered, relaxing a hair once they hit the safer ground of engineering. "Spec allows plus or minus mm, but we're stuck at half that. Parts still pass." Yet, she caught herself about to deep dive tolerances with a complete outsider and snapped the sentence like a sheer pin. "But it's not up to spec. And that bugs you, right?" Adrian answered without missing a beat. "It's like when we build a mock-up. There's a seam on the render so tiny the client will never see it, yet we'll keep tweaking until it's flawless." Kind of obsessive. Serena shot him a startled glance. She rarely met anyone outside her field who cared about a hairline gap. The slightly scruffy man beside her inched up in her estimation. Something like that, she murmured. They reached the subway entrance. Serena thanked him again and turned to leave. Adrian stopped her, rummaged in the same carefree backpack he carried and pulled out a compact umbrella. Take this. Looks like it'll still be raining when you surface. Just bring it back tomorrow. Before she could refuse, he waved, lifted his own soaked navy umbrella, and stepped back into the downpour. Serena stood clutching the still warm umbrella, watching his tall silhouette melt into the wet night. For the first time ever, her mental spreadsheet held a variable that couldn't be quantified. This impromptu favor, this spare umbrella, was a pebble dropped into the calm lake of her regimented life, sending out small, widening ripples. It was the opening entry in an unscheduled column titled Error. Next morning she rode the elevator to Forma's studio and returned the umbrella on schedule. The office was messy and far more interesting than she'd pictured. Foam models, marker sketches, swatches of metal and plastic heaped everywhere. Humming with creative chaos, Adrian was in the middle of a spirited argument about a surface radius. Focused, gesturing, nothing like the easygoing guy who'd walked her home. She set the umbrella down without interrupting and left. But during the day, the memory of that noisy, vital space drifted in and out of her thoughts. A stark contrast to her quiet lab where the loudest sound was the hum of a precision instrument. Later they bumped into each other in the elevator or the coffee nook. Adrian always greeted her with a grin, sometimes launching into weather, headlines, or horror stories about difficult clients. His topics ricocheted everywhere. His tone was light. Serena, used to conversations that ran along straight tracks, often couldn't keep up. Yet she didn't mind. He was uncontrolled light suddenly shining into her color-correct, line-perfect world. Soon she began noticing tinier errors. She heard the elevator pause at 7, his floor, and her pulse lifted. Over coffee she remembered his absurd claim that the caffeine level predicted creative sparks. While reviewing data she caught herself wondering how his award-winning chair, impossibly fluid, actually carried load. On her time management sheet these mental detours were logged as efficiency loss. She tried to analyze the anomaly the way she would a failing module, pro and con list, probability tree, risk matrix. Conclusion remained bleak, rhythms misaligned, industries non-overlapping, personalities orthogonal. He was a freehand doodle, she a calibrated grid. Worse, he'd given no clear signal. Every exchange could be filed under neighborly, probably just a fleeting projection born of too many late shifts, she told herself. Yet no equation could evaporate the humidity that night's rainfall had left behind. Heart rate variance seemed to be a variable her current models couldn't solve. The pivot came Friday after work. Serena had finally cracked the plus or minus problem that had nagged her for weeks. She walked out of Meridian into perfect sunset and spotted Adrian on the curb, apparently waiting. He noticed her and ambled over. Congratulations, he said. She blinked. How do you know? Your forehead smooth. He tapped his own, looking pleased. I clocked it. When you're stuck, a tiny vertical line appears right here. Today it's gone, so the problem's solved. In that instant Serena heard a precise gear inside her slip one tooth with an audible click. All data, all risk scores, collapsed under the weight of that casual, microscopic observation. He had seen what she herself hadn't. That attention crossed the polite perimeter and zeroed in on the possibility she kept deleting. Yeah. It's solved, she answered, voice softer than usual. Time to celebrate. His eyes, honey in the sunset, locked on hers. There's a new place around the corner, Killer Stew. May I treat Riverdale's queen of tolerances to dinner? Call it compensation for all those murdered brain cells. The invitation was unambiguous. Serena's heart spiked like an overdriven sensor. Accept, risk unknown. Decline, status quo. According to plan she should be home dissecting the fresh industry white paper. But looking at his smiling, slightly anxious eyes, she wondered whether life needed to be more than an exact drawing. Maybe letting a small, beautiful error live in the system wouldn't crash it. Maybe it would add scenery. She drew a breath, the way she did before signing off on a major prototype, then met his gaze, and curved her lips into a clear, deliberate arc. All right, she said, but my treat. Consider it repayment for the umbrella. A decision off the approved blueprint. An unscheduled error. But perhaps the name of that error, if it needed one, was simply Flutter.